I've been under a rock for the past few months, but even I've seen how ruthlessly the Labubu monsters infiltrated the world of luxury. But if you're someone who keeps up with luxury trends, you'll know that this notion of over accessorizing handbags is not a brand new idea, but it is quite a controversial one. Some people swear by it and they find it a really fun way to personalize their handbags, while other people find it outrageous to spend so much money on such childish looking pieces. Personally, it's a trend that I have very much played into. It's something that I spend close to $10,000 on. So trust me when I say that I have a lot of experience to share when it comes to the idea of accessorizing handbags with bag charms. So if you'd like to find out everything that there is to know about this trend, which brands do it best, and why I don't think this trend is going anywhere anytime soon, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on watching. As you'll know, there's nothing new under the sun, no matter how much luxury brands try to convince us that there is. People have been hanging bits and bobs of their bags for decades. Some people did it to express their personality and to add a whimsical touch to their favorite handbag, but other people did it truly for functionality. They wanted to make their own life easier by making things like their keys or their gloves more accessible. A great example of that is Jane Birkin, who was famously photographed over accessorizing her iconic Hermes bag with an array of trinkets, keys, and keepsakes, even a watch at one point, which gave it a personalized, more whimsical touch, which I think was very much reflective of Jane Birkin's personality. Obviously, the Birkin quickly became a status symbol, which was actually quite far from who Jane Birkin was. She wasn't someone who was very much into not the finer things in life, but she wasn't particularly self-indulgent. She was an extremely laid-back, down-to-earth, functionality first person, so much so that she at one point even petitioned to have her name removed from exotic Birkin bags because she did not want to be associated with the exploitation of exotic animals. She did not take advantage of the fact that she could have gotten as many Birkins as she wanted to. In fact, she was known for carrying around the same beaten up bags for decades, which is kind of a testament to Hermes's craftsmanship to show that it doesn't matter how casually and how just effortlessly you use these bags, they will stand the test of time. Jane Birkin definitely took advantage of that aspect of the brand, but she did not request new bags on a regular basis. Instead, she tried to enjoy them for as long as she possibly could, and she wanted to turn these extremely iconic bags into a plain canvas that allowed her to express herself and embody a more carefree artistic approach that felt more authentic to her, which is quite an interesting dichotomy if you think about it, that she had to go the extra mile to make a bag feel more authentic to her that in theory was inspired by her. Not only inspired by her, but it was also named after her. Yet she was the one who had to add all these extra touches to make it feel truly like a reflection and an extension of her personality. Anyway, that ethical discussion is topic for another day. Jane Birkin, I think, was one of the most well-known figures for really excessively yet tastefully accessorizing such iconic luxury bags. And it's something that we've talked about before. Luxury has been extremely normalized, especially when it comes to luxury handbags. It feels like that every single person out there carries a luxury bag, and it really went from being seen as a purely for pleasure, self-indulgent hobby collecting luxury handbags to almost a necessity, and you are made feel that if you don't carry a luxury handbag or it's not something that you want to spend your money on, you're either missing out or you are a failure in a weird way, which of course could not be further from the truth. But because of how normalized luxury has become, it means that luxury bags are a dime a dozen. They're not only more accessible physically as an item because you can buy luxury handbags online, because there are secondary resources where you can buy these pieces at a more accessible price point, not to mention super fakes, which is a trend that I do have a dedicated video on. Long story short, you see these bags a lot more often, and you also can access information about these pieces a lot more easily. There was a point in time when finding out things about luxury handbags was quite difficult if you did not live close to one of these boutiques or if you did not have any sort of intel. Whereas now you can just go on social media and find out pretty much anything that there is to know about some of the most iconic luxury handbags. So you have access to information, you have access to these bags, which makes them a lot more widely known and a lot more in demand, because if you know that it exists, you'll probably want it if it's something that you are interested in pursuing. But I feel like a lot of people started buying these luxury bags not because they feel that they are reflective of their personality or because they feel that it is an extension of their own aesthetic, but because they felt like that they had to. That was the natural next step in their life. Once they got a good job, it was only natural for them to buy a Birkin or a Kelly or a Chanel Classic Flap, even if it wasn't something that necessarily fit into their lifestyle and into their wardrobe. But what's great about bag charms and bag accessories is that they really allow you to transform a standard bag into a truly unique conversation starting accessory, which I personally really appreciate and other people do too, considering that the rise in searches for bag charms increased by something like over 300% month on month. And this popularity is also reflected in the fact that more and more luxury brands and also high street brands are offering a unique range of bag charms. But you might be sitting at home thinking, okay, I get it. I also love putting my personal stamp on my bags, but why don't you just have your bags engraved with your initials and move on? Why do you have to spend so much money on such childish, whimsical pieces? Which is a great question, and I think it really comes down to, first of all, personal preference and this idea of collecting sentimental, nostalgic pieces. Most of the people who buy luxury at this point are people who were born in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's the generation that most likely has the disposable income to spend their hard-earned money on luxury pieces. And we are a generation that grew up with the company of Cabbage Patch Kids or a Furby. A lot of us had parents who, instead of getting us a pet, actually entrusted us with raising a Tamagotchi. Perhaps you spent your Sunday mornings watching Teletubbies. I hope you see where I'm going with this. Adding these sweet little accessories on our bags gives us a sense of nostalgia, considering that a lot of them are inspired by these characters that we grew up with. And it might sound silly to have this longing for childhood memories, but a lot of us want to feel this sort of reassurance and this sense of comfort that comes with the idea of nostalgia, especially during these times that can feel quite unstable and uncertain. I think a lot of us as a society is experiencing a time that feels just a little bit chaotic and not the most stable. So it's very normal for us to want to retreat to a time that felt a lot more effortless, a lot more simple, and also a lot more reassuring. So it makes perfect sense for us to want to reach for these things that remind us of those good old days. I mean, I would personally never want to be a child again, but it does give me a sense of comfort to have these pieces that hold a sentimental, nostalgic value. Not to mention that a lot of these bag charms have become collectibles, and there is research that suggests that between 33 to 40% of Americans collect one thing or another, and there are several different reasons. One might be inclined to start collecting. It might be the thrill of the hunt, trying to hunt down something that is incredibly special and rare, which a lot of these bag charms are. And we'll talk about things like the Labubu and the Hermes Rodeo that at one point you could not get your hands on even if you were willing to offer up your firstborn. So it might be the thrill of the hunt, of trying to hunt down something that is incredibly special, or it might be that sense of fulfillment that you feel when you complete a collection. Others might find the control that comes with arranging and carefully curating a collection empowering. When everything else seems overwhelming, it might be something that you feel like you can't take control of, or maybe it's about a sense of belonging to a community of like-minded people. Maybe some people want to put a rodeo or a labubu on their back to show people that, hey, this is something that I am passionate about. If you have a similar value system to me, we belong to the same tribe, we can stick together. And this sense and this sort of excitement that comes with collecting is something that brands are also aware of, and they don't really care why you collect. It might be for one reason or another, it might be for multiple different reasons, because of course there is a lot of overlap between these motivations. It's something that brands love monetizing on and fully taking advantage of, so it's no surprise that they will often make these wearable art pieces into collectibles, and they will launch several different colors and several different collections, because most brands are a business at the end of the day and they are here to make money. Speaking of which, let's talk about some of the most popular luxury bag charms. Now, personally, I'm not sure if this brand was the very first luxury brand to ever launch a dedicated bag charm, but I think they did it most successfully. When I think of bag charms and the first brand to ever launch them, the earliest adopter of this trend that I can think of, the brand that really made it into a dedicated range is Fendi, when they launched the Fendi Monster range back in 2015, which was the creative vision of Karl Lagerfeld. It was a range of really quirky, funky looking fur monsters, which it's not surprising that they used actual fur for the creation of these pieces, considering that no other luxury house is as well known for their fur creations as Fendi is. So it makes a lot of sense that they would try to recycle probably leftover fur in a way that was also quite financially beneficial for them. They had this range of little fur pom-poms in different colors with different faces, reflecting different emotions. They even had little fur dolls inspired by Karl himself, and it's a collection that did incredibly well. It was around for a few years and they had several iterations of these Fendi monsters. They are no longer in production, but Fendi still very much produces bag charms. Funny enough, most of them are actually inspired by food. In fact, they even had a collaboration with a lollipop brand at one point, so you could buy this lollipop case that came with a set of limited edition Fendi lollipops, which you could either wear as a necklace or you could wrap the lollipop case around the handle of your favorite Fendi bag and use it as a bag charm. But they also have fur bag charms that are inspired by different fruits and different sort of food items that you can pick up. They even have coffee cups, they've done fries, they did a huge range of different food inspired bag charms. Then of course we cannot talk about luxury bag charms without talking about the iconic Hermes Rodeo, which you might be thinking that it's weird for Hermes to launch such a juvenile collection, but if you know Hermes really well, you'll know that they have a multi-pronged approach when it comes to seeking inspiration. Yes, a lot of their pieces are quite traditional and quite orthodox. Those are the pieces that are usually inspired by their equestrian heritage. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, they have the most whimsical, mischievous pieces that are actually paying tribute to that creative freedom that you have as a child, and the rodeos are a great example of that. A lot of people criticize these pieces for looking really quite childish, but that's the whole point. That's what they are inspired by. But the technique behind these pieces and the manufacturing process is anything but childish and carefree, because these pieces are still exquisitely made and they are inspired by the process that Hermes uses for their glove making. So they use the same materials and the same techniques. These pieces are still very much around in a ton of different colors and leathers, but they are nowhere near as popular as they were back in 2019, 2020. This collection from Hermes had such a big cult following that you could really not get your hands on one of these pieces for genuinely your firstborn. There was a point in time that these pieces were so in demand that you could not get your hands on one, even though they had been around a lot longer than that. For some reason, they really took off in the 2019 and 2020s. It is a collection that I spent a crazy amount of money on, and I so wish I hadn't done that because they're just kind of redundant. Yes, they might be fun to have one or two of, but you do not need them in every single color and in every single size because the traditional rodeos come in 3 different sizes. And personally, let me tell you, once you have one or two, you have them all. You do not need them in every single color and in every single size. But it was a huge trend for people to build these stables of rodeos in every single color, every single size, and every single leather finish that Hermes had them available in. And then shortly after came the next brand that I thought of was probably Loewe. Loewe still has a range of animal-inspired felt back charms that did incredibly well, and it does go beautifully with Loewe's more whimsical approach to luxury fashion. And of course, we cannot forget about Miu Miu and Coach, who have been showing these over-accessorized handbags on their runways. In fact, you often find these bags with an abundance of back charms on shelves. But don't let the merchandising fool you, because sadly, in most cases, you'll have to buy the bag and each individual back charm separately, which can add up quite quickly. Now, if you're really into this over accessorized, bold look, you probably have to go to a brand like Balenciaga, who actually has dedicated bags that already come equipped with what quite literally feels like tons of metal bits and bobs. They have these rodeo bags that already come distressed with a ton of these keychains, back charms, and accessories. They have an abundance of them, which is definitely a bold look, but it's one that comes with a bold price, because I think these over accessorized bags will set you back twice as much as the plain bag would, and it kind of defeats the purpose of personalizing your bag, because if you really want to personalize it, you probably want to handpick each and every single piece, and you most likely want to choose things that mean something to you. My personal favorite brand to go to for bag charms and bag accessories would be Chrome Heart. Chrome Heart is of course a jewelry brand that creates some incredibly bold, really cool looking solid silver and solid gold pieces. Their most popular pieces to use as a bag charm are their solid sterling silver keychains or their actual chains. They have these chains that people used to attach their keys or their wallet to their chains. It's something that a lot of people, including myself, will use as a back charm, which this chain is, by the way, also available in solid gold, but I think the sterling silver version was already around like $5,000, so you can only imagine how much more expensive that very same chain would have been in solid gold. It probably would have been closer to $20,000 to maybe $25,000, which is definitely not for the faint of heart. But speaking of Chrome Hearts, if it's a brand that you'd like to learn more about, let me know in the comment section. I have been toying with the idea of doing a deep dive video on Chrome Hearts. I'm just not sure if it's a brand well known enough for people to be interested in learning more about it. But if it's something that you would like to learn more about, please let me know in the comment section. I would really appreciate your input. And since we are on the topic of the most luxurious bag accessories, if you want to add a truly eye-catching twist to your favorite luxury handbag and you're a fan of Van Cleef, they have some really fun, cool pieces to play around with, which are not technically made to be used as a back charm, but you can certainly use them as a two-in-one. You can either use them as a piece of jewelry, or you can use them to add your personal twist to your favorite handbags. One thing that I actually find really unique and also really cool is the Alhambra pendant that comes encased with a watch. That's certainly something that you could hang on the handle of your favorite bag. And then another piece that I've actually seen someone use before. I think I've only ever seen one person use this trick, but you can also buy their lucky animal brooch and slide that onto the sangle of your Birkin or Kelly. One word of warning here is that the fastening on those brooches is quite sharp, so be careful with leaving a mark behind on your favorite handbags, especially if you have a bag in exotic leather, because the last thing I would want you to have to deal with is scratches and marks. Obviously, a lot of these dedicated bag charms already come with slightly softened corners, but if you're going to be really creative and if you want to create your own bag charms, that's something to keep an eye out for, any sharp edges that can potentially scratch or mark your bags. And I know for a fact that those lucky animal charms, as cute as they are, they can leave a scratch behind, because when I tried to put one of those on my Kelly wallet, I was really surprised to find a mark on my Kelly wallet when I took the brooch off. Thankfully, I never bought that brooch. I tried it in store, but it was quite an unpleasant experience. So that is just something for you to keep in mind. No matter what you put on your bag, you want to be careful with sharp edges, but Van Cleef is definitely a brand that has some eye-catching pieces that you can accessorize your favorite handbags with. No matter how deeply committed a brand might be to providing artisanal quality pieces, at the end of the day, they are a business, and more so than anything, they are here to make money. So of course, they'll try to create pieces that will be in demand, that people will want to buy on repeat. I think there was an even stronger ulterior motive when it comes to creating bag charms and pushing them so much, and that is because of the decline of traditional SLGs, so things like wallets and card holder that brands used to make a lot of money off of, a lot more than even bags, because there was just a bigger audience for buying SLGs. They were not as expensive, so they were a lot more accessible. A lot more people had the access to these pieces, and they were things that people were able to buy more often, whereas a bag was something that most people had to save up for and they wouldn't buy quite as often. But not that many people buy SLGs at this point because they have become increasingly expensive. There have been a lot of quality concerns and a lot of quality issues when it comes to wallets and SLGs. Not to mention that most people don't have the need for a card holder or a wallet at this point for two reasons. One, our bags are becoming smaller and smaller, so they simply don't fit a wallet or a card holder, or even if they do, you'll probably have to negotiate for space. And most of our banking at this point happens on our phones. Our credit and debit cards are on our phones. Most places don't even accept cash, so there's really no need for you to carry a large amount of cash with you. Even if you want to be prepared, you'll most likely just take a couple of notes, which you can easily wrap and tuck into the inside pocket of your favorite bag. So there's really no need for card holders and wallets, and most people who are luxury enthusiasts at this point will have at least one or two of them in their collections. So there was this gap that brands had to bridge, and luxury bag charms and bag accessories were a great way to do that. And let's not forget that from our point of view, from the consumer's point of view, bag charms are a really fun and charming way to give a bland bag some more personality, and a personality that fits our own aesthetic and our own personality. It is an easy way to just kind of spice up your bags, especially if you don't have the bandwidth or the want to add any more bags to your collection. It is a really easy way to transform a bag and make it feel a little bit more fresh and unexpected. You can take a very traditional stuffy bag and turn it into something a little bit more fun and playful. And what better way to do that than to hang a little monster doll on your bag, which leads us into the success of the Labubu dolls, which I would love to hear your thoughts on. Are you a fan of these Labubu dolls? Do you have any in your collection? If you are not a fan, are you against them? What do you think? I would love to get the general consensus and what you think about these pieces, because I was quite new to the idea of the Labubu dolls, even though this range has been around since 2019, but I think it has really started becoming quite popular in 2023. But if this is your first time being faced with one of these little monsters, this is everything you need to know about the Labubu back charms, which were actually created by a Hong Kong born and Netherlands raised artist, Casing Lung, who was actually inspired by Nordic folklore when he created his little army of monsters for a series of picture books that they began selling merch for back in 2019 at Pop Mart, which Pop Mart is kind of like a Chinese dollar store. That's the closest thing I could compare it to. Not that everything costs $1, but they sell these things that no one really needs, but everyone wants. They have the most eclectic collection and curation of pieces. They have kitchen accessories, they have travel accessories, they have stationery, and everything just feels really cute and playful. Everything is really accessibly priced. They have their own lore and their own sort of stories that they have pieces inspired by, but then they will also collaborate with brands like Harry Potter and create an entire line of bits and bobs for them. And they're really all things that are just incredibly fun. And Labubu is part of the Pop Mart family, which they started selling back in 2019, but they really started taking off in 2023 when they introduced these plush toys that came on a key ring that allowed people to take their favorite monsters on the go. And these monsters also came in limited edition mystery boxes, so if you went to one of these stores, you never really knew what you were going to end up with. And if you don't know how popular these pieces are at this point, Pop Mart stores usually have lines in front of them in the morning because people are so desperate to get their hands on one of these pieces and complete their collections. So the Labubu doll is really the perfect example that plays into every single facet that we discussed. They are a great way to personalize your bags because they come in a ton of finishes, in a ton of different themes that allows you to express your own personality. They hold a sentimental, nostalgic value, and they are also collectibles. So it is really just the perfect storm. And this trend was further fueled by the endorsement of these pieces by the likes of Rihanna and Lisa, who of course use these pieces as an accessory on their favorite designer bags. And Labubu has been so incredibly successful that Pop Mart's revenue doubled, largely due to the success of these little monsters. I think they made something like $1.8 billion in the last year, which is really quite shocking. But at the end of the day, it's all about your personal self-expression, and these back charms allowing you to give your more basic, bold, common bags a little bit more personality. That's what it's all about. So there's really no right or wrong way of doing it. Personally, the Labubu dolls are not something that I would spend my own money on. It's not something that I am inspired to try. But if you are, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section about these particular pieces and also about this trend in general. What do you think about over accessorizing your bags? I think it really comes down to personal preference. But while you're down there sharing your thoughts, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. I really appreciate you being here and watching, and I cannot wait to see you back here with a new video really soon.